Welcome to the Word Sculpting Institute. I'm Letitia Thomas, your sculptor of words, sculpting words that cut through flesh and bone to soul. This word sculpture is entitled, Lest We Forget. Enjoy the journey. Lest We Forget is the fourth piece in the Grandmother Trilogy and the Times. These are the times we must remember, lest we forget. Lest we forget. Remember when being young was fun? When children were happy to just be? When our fights were short-lived, but friendships lasted forever? And play was all kids knew how to do. There was a time we didn't even know we were poor, when we thought patches were the style because everybody was wearing them. When there were so many of us in one family, we didn't need toys, and food was never an issue. When we were grateful for whatever we had. I remember when problems were considered grown folks' business, and kids didn't get in grown folk conversations. And grown-ups kept kids, children, as long as they could. When church was not an option and disrespect wasn't tolerated. Remember when discipline was called chastising and anybody could do it? When it hurt, but it learned you a lesson you ain't forgot yet. Remember when every day began with good morning and ended with good night? When yes sir and no ma'am was a common reply, and the phrase just keep on living was a lesson all in itself. You remember when church lasted all day and half the night? When pews had no cushions and people kneeled to pray? When we walked to deliver our offerings and we stood more than we sat? When God was laud and saying thank you made you shout? And have mercy was a complete prayer. At one time, we knew trouble didn't last always and God was bigger than the man. When love was all we had and all we could afford, trust and integrity was our collateral, and a handshake was a binding contract. Remember when tough times made us tough people? When we were colored before we became Negroes? When people had an S on the end, when your peoples was my peoples, and every statement ended in God willing, or if the Lord say the same. It used to be a man who didn't work didn't eat, and we knew what was in our food because we raised it ourselves. When wringing a chicken's neck was not considered animal cruelty, and shucking corn was a prerequisite to eating it all. But as long as you had, no one went without. Remember the days when your grandmama looked like my grandma and our principles and values were the same? Remember seeing the change before it arrived and the past just started slipping away? We became more like others and less like we were raised. Then our young folk became old folks, and our old folks just stopped growing up. Hope, it's in our future, but it's riding off the prayers of our past. So every now and again, we must revisit our old landmarks and remember, lest we forget. Lest We Forget is the fourth piece in the Grandmother Trilogy and the Times. These are the times we must remember, lest we forget. Come on back to the Word Sculpting Institute and experience the Grandmother Trilogy: Grandma's Things, Grandma's Image, and Grandma's Prayers. Thank you for visiting the Word Sculpting Institute. I'm Letitia Thomas, your sculptor of words. Hope, it's in our future, but it's riding off the prayers of our past. So every now and again, we must revisit our old landmarks.